One of the things I hear people say over and over again is, I just don't feel the drive I used to have. Maybe you felt that way yourself. At one point in your life, you were on fire. You had a spark. You'd wake up with energy, with ambition, with this hunger to go after what you wanted. And now maybe it feels like that fire is burned out. You're dragging yourself through the day asking, where did it all go? What happened to me? Here's the truth. That fire doesn't just disappear. It doesn't vanish into thin air. It gets buried under excuses, under disappointments, under the little lies we tell ourselves to avoid the uncomfortable truth. And the uncomfortable truth is this: you lost that drive when you stopped taking responsibility for your own life. Now, stay with me here, because this isn't about beating yourself up. It's about understanding something fundamental about human beings. Drive doesn't come from waiting for someone to motivate you, or from the world suddenly becoming easier. Drive comes from responsibility. It's born the moment you decide, this is on me. My future, my progress, my direction, that's my responsibility. Think about it. The times in your life when you felt the most alive, the most engaged, the most driven were not the times when everything was easy. They were the times when you carried weight, when you stepped up, when you said, this is mine to handle. Maybe it was when you took on a project at work and everyone was counting on you. Maybe it was when you became a parent and realized a little life was depending on you. Or maybe it was when you finally decided to stop drifting and commit to something meaningful. In each of those moments, responsibility was the spark. The problem today is that we live in a culture that tells us to outsource responsibility. If something goes wrong, blame the system. If you're unhappy, blame your parents, blame your circumstances. And look, yes, life is unfair, challenges are real, and you don't control everything. But the second you hand over responsibility, you hand over power. And when you give away your power, you kill your drive. Because how can you feel motivated when you've convinced yourself that you're not the one steering the ship? So how do you get it back? You start by drawing a line in the sand and saying, enough, this is my life, and I am responsible for it. That shift alone changes everything. It doesn't mean you control the whole world. It means you control how you show up in it. And when you internalize that, something extraordinary happens. Your brain stops looking for excuses and starts looking for solutions. Instead of saying, why is this happening to me? You begin asking, what can I do about it? And that question, that single shift in focus, brings your drive roaring back to life. Now, let me be clear, responsibility isn't a burden. That's how people usually frame it, right? They think, oh no, responsibility means more weight on my shoulders. But in reality, responsibility is what gives your life meaning. Without it, you drift. With it, you wake up with a reason. And when you have a reason, you have drive. You don't need to force it. It comes naturally because your actions matter. I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine two versions of yourself. One version is constantly waiting for the perfect conditions, waiting for someone to push them, waiting for the spark to magically reappear. That person feels stuck, powerless, always running in circles. Now imagine the other version. That version wakes up every day and says, what can I take responsibility for today? What's in my control? Where can I step up? Suddenly, even the smallest action feels powerful. Cleaning your space, finishing the task you've been putting off, following through on your word, all of it stacks up, and that stack of responsibility creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates drive. And before you know it, the fire is back. Not because the world handed it to you, but because you claimed it. So if you've lost the drive you used to have, stop waiting for it to show up. Stop hoping it's going to knock on your door one morning. It's not. You don't wait for drive, you generate it. And you generate it by taking responsibility right now for the direction of your life. That's the moment everything changes. One of the biggest reasons people lose their drive is simple. They don't know what they're aiming in it anymore. They're moving through life without a clear target. And let me tell you, if you don't know where you're going, your brain has no reason to fire up, no reason to push, no reason to generate energy. Drive requires direction. Think about it like this. Imagine you're holding a bow and arrow. If I blindfold you and spin you around and then I say, shoot, what happens? You fire the arrow, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you don't know where the target is. There's no sense of progress, no feedback, no victory when you hit. And after a while, you stop shooting. Why? Because what's the point? That's exactly how most people are living their lives. They're shooting without a target. And when you shoot without a target, you lose motivation. Now, here's the truth. Human beings are wired for goals. We are goal-seeking machines. It's built into our psychology. When you have a target, your brain literally reorganizes itself to help you pursue it. You start noticing opportunities you missed before. You feel more alert, more alive, more focused. But when the target is vague, when your vision is cloudy, you wake up drifting, and drifting kills drive. So what does it take to get that drive back? It takes clarity, not just about what you don't want anymore, but about what you do want. Most people can tell you everything they hate about their lives. They can list out all the things they're tired of, frustrated with, or trying to avoid. But if you ask them, what exactly do you want? They freeze. They've never really taken the time to articulate it. And if you can't articulate it, you can't pursue it. That's why clarity is power. You don't just need a vision. You need a vision you can see, you can feel, you can describe in detail. What does your ideal life look like? Not in vague terms like, I just want to be happy, or I want to be successful. That doesn't work. You need to define it in ways that your brain understands. If it's financial freedom, what does that mean? How much by when? What would you be doing with it? If it's health, what does that look like? How much energy do you want? What do you want your body to be capable of? If it's relationships, what do you want to give? What do you want to experience? What kind of partner or family life are you creating? Clarity sharpens the mind like a blade. The more specific your vision, the stronger the pull. It becomes magnetic. You don't have to push yourself as much because the vision itself pulls you forward. And here's the beautiful part. Once you have that big vision, you break it down into smaller, achievable goals. That's how you keep momentum. If the only thing you focus on is the giant, distant dream, you'll feel overwhelmed. But when you turn that vision into small, concrete steps, daily, weekly, monthly, you give yourself wins along the way, and those wins are fuel. They rebuild your confidence. They remind you that progress is happening, and they create the momentum that keeps drive alive. It's like climbing a mountain. If all you do is stare at the peak, you'll feel exhausted before you even take the first step. But if you focus on the next marker, the next ridge, the next patch of ground you can cover, suddenly it feels doable. And before you know it, you look up and realize you've already climbed halfway. That's the secret. You hold a vision of the peak in your heart, but your eyes are on the next step. Now, some people avoid setting clear goals because they're afraid. They're afraid of failure. They're afraid that if they get specific and they don't make it, it'll hurt too much. But here's the irony. By avoiding clarity, they guarantee failure. They guarantee drift. And drift is worse than failure because at least when you fail, you learn something, you grow, you adjust. But when you drift, you learn nothing, you just fade. If you want your drive back, you have to stop drifting. You have to stop wandering through your days hoping the fire will come back on its own. It won't. Fire needs fuel, and clarity is the fuel. When you give your mind a target, when you break it down into achievable goals, when you wake up knowing exactly what you're working toward, that's when the spark reignites. That's when you feel the energy come back. That's when you get that old drive and more. So if you're tired of feeling stuck, start by answering the question, what's vision? What do I truly want? Be specific. Be bold. Don't shrink it down to what feels safe. And then turn that vision into small steps you can start on today. That's how you stop drifting. That's how you find your direction again. Here's the trap so many people fall into when they've lost their drive. They think they need to do something massive, something extraordinary to get it back. They look at their life and say, I've fallen so far behind. If I'm going to change this, I need to make a huge move. And because that move feels impossible, they do nothing. They stay stuck. But the truth is, you don't rebuild your drive with giant leaps. You rebuild it with small, consistent steps. You don't have to overhaul your entire life in one day. What you need is momentum. And momentum comes from starting small. Think about a train. When it's standing still, it can be blocked by something as small as a rock on the track. But once it's moving, even slowly, it builds power. And when it's at full speed, it can smash through barriers that once seemed impossible to overcome. That's exactly how your drive works. When you're standing still, even the smallest obstacle feels overwhelming. But when you get moving, when you build momentum, suddenly the obstacles don't look so big anymore. So here's the question. Where do you start? You start with something small, something so simple, so doable that you can't talk yourself out of it. Maybe it's cleaning your space. Maybe it's writing down your goals for the day. Maybe it's committing to 10 minutes of exercise or reading a single page of a book or sending that one email you've been avoiding. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you prove to yourself you can follow through. And here's why this works. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you build trust. And trust in yourself is the foundation of drive. Because let's be honest, the reason a lot of people have lost their motivation isn't that life got too hard. It's that they stopped believing themselves. They set goals, broke promises, and over time they trained their brain to expect failure. So when they say, I'm going to turn things around, their own mind responds, yeah, right? We've heard that before. But when you start small, you interrupt that cycle. You set a target you can actually hit. And when you hit it, you prove something powerful. I can do this. I can follow through. That's how you begin to rebuild that self-trust. And once you start trusting yourself again, you naturally begin to aim higher. Now, don't misunderstand me here. Starting small doesn't mean staying small. The goal isn't to just clean your room or write in a journal for the rest of your life. The goal is to use those small wins as stepping stones to something bigger. Each step builds confidence. Each step builds momentum, and each step allows you to take on more. Before you know it, the actions that once felt impossible are now just part of your routine. This is why I say start small, but aim high. Keep your vision bold, but give yourself permission to take the first step without pressure. Because drive doesn't come from thinking about the mountain you have to climb. It comes from conquering the next foothold. And here's the thing. You already know this. But think back to a time in your life when you built momentum. Maybe it was starting a new job, learning a skill, getting in shape. At first, it felt awkward, maybe even impossible. But you did one small thing, then another, and then another. And suddenly you had momentum. You didn't get there overnight. You got there through consistency. People overestimate what they can do in a day, but they underestimate what they can do in a year of steady progress. The drive you're searching for doesn't return all at once. It comes back one small win at a time, and each win stacks on top of the other until you wake up and realize you're unstoppable. So stop waiting for the perfect moment to make a giant leap. That moment will never come. Instead, look at your life right now and ask, what's one thing, just one, that I can do today to move forward? Do that. Then tomorrow, do it again. Keep stacking those wins. Keep building that trust. And soon enough, you won't have to chase drive anymore. Drive will be chasing you. That's how you rebuild momentum. That's how you create lasting change. One of the biggest lies people buy into is the idea that life should be easy. That if you're struggling, if you're in pain, if you're overwhelmed, it means something's wrong. But let's get real. Life is hard. Life is suffering. That's not negativity. That's reality. Everyone in this room has faced pain, setbacks, loss, disappointment. And if you haven't yet, you will. That's not meant to discourage you. It's meant to wake you up, because the drive you're looking for doesn't come from avoiding suffering. It comes from confronting it. Here's the paradox. The more you run from your pain, the weaker you feel. The more you try to hide from chaos, the more chaotic your life becomes. You can't outrun the challenges of life. They'll chase you down. But when you stop running, when you turn around and face them head on, something extraordinary happens. The suffering becomes fuel. The very thing you thought would destroy you becomes the thing that makes you stronger. Think about it. Some of the most driven, passionate, unstoppable people you've ever met aren't the ones who had it easy. They're the ones who went through hell and made the choice to rise anyway. They didn't deny their suffering. They embraced it. They didn't avoid chaos. They walked straight into it with courage. And because of that, they grew into something more than they ever imagined. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who's hit rock bottom, lost their job, lost their relationship, maybe even lost their sense of purpose. Two paths open up. One path is denial. They numb themselves, they distract themselves, they blame the world. And what happens? Nothing changes. In fact, it gets worse. The other path is acceptance. They look at the wreckage and say, okay, this is real. This is my chaos. This is my pain. But I'm not going to let it own me. I'm going to face it. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to use it as a foundation to rebuild. Which path do you think reignites drive? Always the second, always. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. Voluntarily walking into suffering takes courage. It takes strength. It takes a decision. But here's what you need to remember. You don't become strong by avoiding weight. You become strong by lifting it. And life will always hand you weight. The question is, will you lift it or will you run from it? The truth is, when you avoid suffering, your world shrinks. Your confidence shrinks, your energy shrinks. But when you face it, your world expands. Your confidence expands, your drive expands, because you realize, if I can get through this, what else am I capable of? That realization is rocket fuel for your life. Look, chaos will always be there. Life is unpredictable. Just when you think everything is lined up, something will happen to throw you off balance. But the person who embraces that truth, who steps into the storm, instead of waiting for it to pass, is the one who grows. And growth is where drive comes from. If you're not growing, you're decaying. And if you're decaying, no wonder your drive feels dead. But if you're growing, even if it's painful growth, you feel alive. So how do you start? You start by asking, what am I avoiding? What's the chaos I keep pretending isn't there? Is it a tough conversation? A broken habit? A financial mess I don't want to face? A part of myself I don't want to admit? Whatever it is, that's your entry point. Because the place where you least want to go, that's exactly where your power is hiding. When you step into that chaos, you transform it. Suddenly, it's no longer a monster chasing you. It's a challenge you've chosen to take on. And once you've chosen it, it loses its power to control you. You're not a victim anymore. You're a warrior. And warriors don't wait for comfort to act. They choose the discomfort that shapes them into something greater. So if you're sitting here wondering why your drive has faded, maybe it's because you've been running. Running from pain. Running from fear. Running from the truth. Stop running. Turn around. Face it. Walk into it willingly. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's difficult. but it's also the only path to strength, the only path to meaning, the only path to that fire you've been missing. Because when you face chaos voluntarily, you don't just survive, you grow. And growth is what brings your drive roaring back. That's the choice in front of you right now. Let's talk about one of the biggest traps that robs people of their drive. It's the temptation to go for what's easy, what's convenient, what gives you a quick hit of pleasure right now. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Scrolling through your phone for hours, binge watching shows, chasing short-term distractions, settling for shortcuts. In the moment, it feels good. It feels like relief. But afterward, you feel emptier, you feel weaker, and slowly, without even realizing it, your fire dies out. Why? Because the human spirit wasn't designed to thrive on expedience. Expedience is about avoiding effort, avoiding struggle, avoiding responsibility. It's about doing what feels good now without thinking about the cost later. And every time you choose expedience, you're training yourself to expect less from life and less from yourself. But meaning is different. Meaning is what lasts. Meaning is what pulls you forward even when life is hard. Meaning is what makes you willing to carry the weight, to endure discomfort, to push through resistance because you know it matters. And meaning is the only thing strong enough to sustain your drive long term. Here's the truth. Meaning and expedience are constantly competing in your life. Every day you make choices between them. Do I eat what's easy or what fuels me? Do I escape into distraction or do I engage in something that matters? Do I cut corners or do I hold myself to a higher standard? Those decisions, moment by moment, shape your destiny. And when you consistently choose what's meaningful, your life expands, your confidence grows, returns. Think about it. The times in your life when you felt the most alive, the most engaged, the most driven, were they the times you were chasing comfort? Or were they the times you were chasing something that actually mattered to you? Maybe it was building a career, raising a child, starting a business, creating something you believed in. Whatever it wasn't easy. It wasn't convenient. It required sacrifice. It required effort. It required saying no to distractions. But because it mattered, you felt alive. That's the paradox. The harder path often brings the deeper fulfillment. The easy path, the expedient path, leaves you empty-hearted. The meaningful path fills you with purpose. And purpose is what reignites drive. Now, meaning looks different for everyone. For one person, it might mean pursuing a craft with excellence. For another, it might mean serving their family. For another, it might mean contributing to their community or living out their faith or creating something beautiful that outlasts them. The specifics don't matter. What matters is that it's something bigger than your own comfort. Something that calls you to rise, to stretch, to give more than you thought you had. And here's what happens when you commit to meaning. You stop feeling like a victim of your circumstances. You stop wasting energy on petty distractions. Suddenly, the obstacles in your path don't look like reasons to quit. They look like tests, opportunities to prove your commitment. Meaning gives suffering a purpose, and when suffering has a purpose, it stops being destructive and starts being transformative. Without meaning, suffering crushes you. With meaning, suffering strengthens you. That's why people who orient their lives around meaning can endure almost anything. They don't crumble under the weight of life because they've decided that weight matters. They've decided it's worth carrying. So ask yourself, what's meaningful to me? Not what's easy, not what's convenient, not what will give me the fastest gratification, but what's meaningful. What would make me proud of my life 10 years from now? What would make me proud on my deathbed? Because those are the questions that cut through the noise. Those are the questions that pull you out of distraction and back into direction. And when you know the answer, when you know what's meaningful, you have something no short-term comfort can ever give you a reason to get up, a reason to push forward, a reason to keep going even when it's hard. That reason is what creates the unstoppable kind of drive. So if you're serious about getting back the drive you used to have, stop chasing what's expedient. Stop chasing shortcuts. Stop chasing distractions. Stop chasing the quick fix. Trade those in for something deeper, something lasting, something meaningful. That's the path to real fulfillment. That's the path to real power. That's the path to the kind of drive that doesn't just come back, it stays. And it all starts with choosing meaning today.